So I went through a phase where I just stopped believing in God due to my lack of understanding and my own disillusionment. I came to this conclusion after wrestling with my religious trauma, after being cast out as satanic for a benign life decision. Not coming out as some alternative sexuality, mind you. I just started listening to heavy metal music. Funny. And soon I found out that atheism wasn't the answer I sought either. Now, I was raised a Baptist. I only had an idea about what God and Christianity were. The way it was presented to me at the time was, I felt like, oppressive. I'm doomed to hell for doing this, this, and that. Even the most benign of all things, like listening to metal or dressing a certain way or anything of that sort. It felt suffocating being a Christian. But then looking back on it, I didn't even know what being a Christian even was. Now, I had no idea what being a Christian was, even though I was raised by the faith as a child. Well, really, I didn't have an idea what faith was. I thought faith was just blind belief, but faith simply means trust. Most people trust that they'll wake up tomorrow morning or they'll make it to work safely. So a trust in God isn't that far off. In my head, I looked at God as some kind of employer. I do this, I get this. At least that's how it was explained to me. I was like given this set of rules, like don't do this, don't do that, dress this way, look this way. And I thought, like, well, no matter what I do, I'll be damned to go to hell, right? So why believe? But then I came to find out that life after religion was really nothing. So recently, throughout the last year, I actually began to dig deeper what Christianity actually was. And what I learned that God wants to have a relationship with us. He wasn't some kind of like employer or some kind of earthly king or whatever. He wants a relationship. Sure, he has commandments, but that's not the point. He doesn't look for perfection or like perfect rule following. Christianity is the belief that we're all broken, that we're all born into sin. What it was that you follow his commandments because you love God. You want to seek communion with God, to be transfigured into his image. And with Christianity today, the way that we've been raised on Christianity, it's a superficial emotionality. It's bolt on. It's padded up to fit anything you see fit. Most people, including some Christians, just see God as an idea that they can use to justify any act they commit, or they only see him as just miracles. He does he does everything for me because I ask him to with no effort on my part. That's the belief. God wants to work with us and through us. We don't make him work for us. And that's the issue I had. Now, onto atheism. Atheism is the belief of non-belief or a lack of belief of God. It persists that human reason is above all else and that only what we can be certain of is true. In other words, what our senses can recognize is true. Atheism promotes reason while at the same time denying it. In the atheist worldview, reason can become a construct, or that reason turns out to be a construct if God does not exist. Even though atheism uses reason, logic, and metaphysics to justify all of its claims. See, that's why I went to atheism. The idea of human reason is what attracted to me. Human beings have advanced the world in many ways, independent of some transcendent force, so I thought. I believe that we humans can figure out anything, create better societies through reason and intellect. Then I looked into myself and I saw others and I found that that was very naive. Reason can explain why a thing is, while the thing itself ends up not being true. I can reason why if I eat rotted fruit, It won't make me sick, but that's not true. You'll get sick. Human reason is valuable, especially if it only pertains to what we can only observe in front of us. What's in front of us can't explain why, what it can't explain why it came to be, or what made it. Thus, one can only define what we see as ad hoc, arbitrarily, independent of anything external. This hinders deeper discussion, even though atheists proclaim their belief with a sense of profoundness. It lacks a foundation for why it comes to the conclusion it does. In and of itself, atheism has no metaphysical realities. It however implies metaphysical commitments for all of its claims, usually taken from the religions they claim usually taken from the religions they claim to not believe in. Sometimes the atheist will affirm some spiritual concept like karma or something, even though he does not believe in God. I like some atheists other condemn others for Islamophobia, and it had me thinking, why would an atheist even care if someone is an Islamophobe if you don't believe in any religion? It befuddles me, and after a while, I question my non-belief. Is it non-belief for certain religions? Do other religions get a pass? Now atheists are atheists because they feel as though there is no evidence for God. The atheist has an empiricist view on evidence. Only what can be shown is true, as I said before. So I'm gonna give you a scenario. A murder has been committed. The police search the crime scene for clues, fingerprints, hair follicles, footprints, the works. The police come to the conclusion that this person committed the murder. And after new evidence comes to the forefront, or after other testimonies or whatever, the man they caught was not the perpetrator. The real killer remains at large. This is why empiricism is stunted. It only proves what's there, not what it means or why it exists. So when the atheist asks for evidence of God, this is what frame of reference he has. He demands evidence. He lives on evidence. But how does he know what he's seeing is true? If he's even presented with the evidence of God's existence, is it even the answer that he wants? There's evidence for evolution, they say, the theory that explains most of the atheist worldview. However, scientists come into conflict as to what this evidence means, the whys and the hows. And there's been falsified evidence that has come to light over the years for evolution, like Piltdown Man, the Cardiff Giant, and many others. I'm not saying that evidence itself is unnecessary. It just doesn't prove anything outside of itself. The human sense is valuable. It only measures what's in front of us. So when the atheist asks for evidence, what does it mean? Now, the atheist life is an empty existence. Without God or the absence of a soul, the human being is reduced to a mass of biochemical functions. We have no purpose, no reason, no meaning. Everything is random. Or even if they say it's not, the reasons they present is feeble. And that's just taking it to its logical conclusion. Even when we don't, somehow the atheist worldview tries to justify itself with classical ethics, usually from the religions they deny. They'll say evolution comes with an illusion of purpose in place of a soul, affirming that even if all religions are false, it is a necessary mechanism for people to live from. The atheist lives in the subjective. Whatever is pleasurable is good, and it should be desired. But that pleasure barely depends on the individual or group. Who decides what's good? Better yet, what even is good, if there even is such a thing? We decide based on our environment. In other words, we're a blank slate, something that can be filled with anything. The only thing that is certain is death. Everything is predetermined, everything is planned. We have no free will. So why even live? Why even be anything? Why work? Why eat? It ultimately just leads to nihilism, the blight of our current social zeitgeist, the belief of most man today. Living a life and having morals based on pleasure is wrong because pleasure is feeble, pleasure is fleeting, it's contingent on what's happening at the moment. The more you chase pleasure, the more restless and agitated you become. If someone doesn't have his way, it's like being an addict, and that's what we see today. A population that's addicted to the hedonic side of life. So today, I would consider myself a Christian, at least in practice. My journey away from atheism wasn't a sudden conversion, but it was just a slow unfolding. If human reason is inherently fallible, if empirical evidence can constantly be redefined, and if a purely materialistic existence is ultimately empty, then the foundation of which I built my non belief was inherently unstable. The question had changed from does God exist to what framework best explains the reality that I experience. The atheist worldview, in its, in its attempt to deny the metaphysical, ironically creates its own arbitrary metaphysics, borrowing morality and meaning by rejecting their source, i.e., borrowing from religions while rejecting the source of its religion. It demands evidence for God but requires no evidence for the inherent goodness it occasionally affirms or the illusion of purpose it concedes as necessary. This became too much for me to bear. I began to realize that true belief, rather than being an escape from thought, was the necessary foundation for deep, consistent thought. The rejection of God didn't lead to liberation, but it just led to confusion, where everything is random and subjective. It becomes utterly meaningless. So, yeah, that's all I got for this video, and I'll see you next time.